All right, Coach. Again, well, first of all, thanks so much for making this team.
Yeah, no problem, Vince. Good seeing you.
Absolutely, you as well. And Coach, we'll start with this. Obviously you got extended for a couple of years there to stay in Manhattan. And just when you look at you've been there for the last, I think, going on your 11th year now, and looking at what you've been able to build there, and obviously especially last year, just how excited are you now just to continue to build what you've been building the last couple of years and just be able to stay at K-State for the long haul?
Yeah, well, my wife and I have really enjoyed Manhattan. We've enjoyed Kansas State. We've enjoyed just being back in the Midwest. I grew up Kansas City, so this is very familiar. My wife grew up Junction City, Chapman. So, it's a special place to be. And we don't take it for granted because it's not like that. It's not like that for people everywhere, when you have jobs and you move and so a lot of special moments, a lot of family around, and then just you mentioned just this team. We've been very fortunate to have a great culture here, and very fortunate to have some talented players, and I think this team coming up has a chance to be a really, really good. We're excited about the opportunity for this team to be really good. We're coming off a really good year, and we've got a chance to be good again.
And just obviously talk about, bringing back Aoka, right? That's obviously a big piece for you. Obviously she was a great force last year and has been her whole career. And you bring back four of the starting five last year, obviously minus Gabby. But just talk about bringing in Aoka back one more year. What were those conversations like? And when, you kind of gave the cat call, if you will, and we found out it was going to be Aoka coming back.
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
that conversation like? And when did she finally tell you that she wanted to come back to Manhattan one more year?
you know, Aoki's got a little mean streak in her in that she likes to keep me waiting on these decisions. And uh, I think she kind of likes the surprise. So we were having discussions throughout the year. And we kind of started to have the discussion, when she fractured her ankle. And quite honestly, I didn't know which way that discussion would go. And she was very much conflicted at that time. So then we just said, look, let's put it on the back burner. Let's, focus on the year but also knowing that Yoki's a planner, and kind of knowing a plan helps her focus. So I kind of laid out some things for her. This is a new era in college athletics. So when you talk about all the components of NIL, the financial possibilities, she had been on the front end of that when she broke the NCAA record with 61 points. And so, but that component has gotten bigger. And then I'll be honest, with the injury coming off of last year, she kind of knew that it was going to be really hard for that knee to go into the WNBA with no rest. And just the way the WNBA, they start right after the college season ends. So literally you're talking the draft is a week later. And so we kind of knew that, and we'd kind of discussed that. And I had discussed that with a lot of WNBA GMs about that, where she was in that. So anyways, her decision. I think one, she loves her teammates. That's a big part with Yoki, is that she has always been a culture kid, wants the culture to be good, wants to lead that culture, and wants to play with people that are going to be lifelong friends. And that was important to her. And the chance to be really good was important to her. And so she felt good about all those things, but still making that decision to come back, I don't think was an easy one, but I think those things made it easier for her.
And to have a person like that come back, and obviously Taryn hopefully will have, that big leap, and we kind of saw what she was able to do, and, bringing back Ziana again. So, you have a lot of good pieces coming back off the bench that really brought that spark for you. And to bring back so many of those pieces, not only for your starting lineup, but also for your bench, how beneficial is that for you when, yes, you have those coming back, you also had in the portal, but how big are those bench pieces that are coming back for another season too?
One of the things our staff's talked about is that when you talk about Taryn, Zai, Sanchez, and Maupin, they're four players with a lot of upside, four players that still very young in their career, and that doesn't even include Imani Lester, who got sick late in the year and struggled. But we think that there's a high ceiling for those players. I think Taryn, you mentioned her, both Taryn and Zai, I think are having terrific summers. They're putting the work in. They're getting a lot of stuff done. Ziana Walker is just wearing out the gym. She is in here all the time. Taryn has shot the ball as well as I've seen a player shoot it here at Kansas State in my time here. So excited about them. So, yeah, we've got, I hope it's a really hard thing to make the lineup out, but we're a long ways from there. So can they won today. We had a good day today. We're going to try to win tomorrow. And then ultimately, we hope we put enough good days together that we win the month of July, because this is a big one for us.
And I guess one thing Coach Tang brought up about last week or 2 weeks ago now, that at least for his squad, this is where, he has his team already assembled in July, which he hasn't had the first 2 years, where guys are coming in really late. And excuse me, I think for you, you have, I think, most of your team there already. And so to have that already in July, maybe from your perspective, Coach Tank said that was very beneficial for you. Do you see that being a benefit too when you have your team there or in early July?
Well, we've had them here. We haven't been as portal heavy because we've retained our players in terms of just our roster, right? So, next year is going to be interesting because we've got 7 seniors on this roster. So next year, it'll be exactly what Coach Tang's going through. Is the quicker you can get them on campus, the quicker you can start to see where the pieces fit. Now with us, quite honestly, for me, it's a little bit of a good time for me just to have a lot of conversations with them. Let the assistants do a lot of the coaching, because these players know my voice, but having conversations differently in the summer, I think, is always a great benefit. Talking to Serena about more situational basketball, talking to Taryn about the point guard jump she needs to make sophomore year, talking to Zai about those things, and then watching them in drill work put it together. So it's a little bit different with this particular group. I think that we've got pretty good self-starters, and I'm enjoying just being able to spend some time with them differently. The Rwanda trip was big for that as well. We took the team to Africa, and almost everybody got to go. So we've had a lot of good interactions from the end of the season until this point now.
I was going to bring that up, that Rwanda trip, right? It's every 4 years or 5 years that, basketball teams, football teams, whoever can, do these trips like that. And why was that so special? And what made you guys choose Rwanda? Just if you can maybe kind of illustrate what that trip was like, and how just cool it was just to kind of see, a different part of the world.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Sean and Jenny Eust, have done some mission type trips, and they've done it in Haiti. They had done one in Rwanda, I think, back in 2018. And so that piqued my interest. And we started that conversation pre-pandemic. And then everything had to go on hold when the pandemic hit, and we weren't able to do it. But it's been a goal of mine to take a team on a different trip, because what a lot of teams do with these foreign trips is they go to Europe and they play some teams, and it's more of a sightseeing. This was work. I mean, when we got to Rwanda, we were able to do some sightseeing at the genocide memorial, but then we had a 5-hour bus trip, got there, and then the next morning we were working, building the court the next morning. So, we got a great perspective of just a different part of the world, and maybe a greater appreciation of all the freedoms that we enjoy here in America, and all the that we have here, because the area that we put a court in, they don't have a whole lot. They don't have clean water. They don't have things that we take for granted every day. We stayed in a nunnery that didn't have any air conditioning, didn't have TVs, didn't have the things that we, take for granted every day, right? So great trip. I would do it again. And the one unique thing about this trip for us is you can actually do this kind of trip every year because we didn't play games and we didn't practice extra. Those are the trips that you can only do one every 4 years. So we'll look to do it again here and hopefully sooner than later because it was a great experience.
Absolutely. I saw a lot of the stuff on social media and all the different things you guys did with the diaries. And I know there's so many different pictures. I thought that was really cool. And, Coach, I guess, building off of that, right? There's always about team bonding. You talk about team culture and you talk about just, that retention and all that stuff. And you see the girls, bonding probably pretty early. And a lot of these girls have had time on the court together, have been able to build that culture. And why is that so important for not even just your program, but in general? Why is culture maybe so important when talking about a basketball team or doing these trips? Why is culture so important?
Well, I think it starts with just good quality people and the same goals, like-minded people that want to work hard and want to earn what they get, those things. And we're getting further away from those things in our, it sounds cliche. You're getting further away from those things on social media. You're getting wise and I just think when you talk about putting a team together, the quicker you can develop the hard work together, the kind of shared suffering that it takes in the weight room, conditioning, because it's not all great stuff, right? But some of the best stories I have from athletics are from the hardest days we worked together to achieve something. And, some of the great stories that come with are, I'm sure they have some from me that, well, boy, coach put us through the toughest 3-hour practice. And those things are what you end up appreciating as a college student. You always hear college students talk about, I ate ramen noodles my entire freshman year. Well, those are kind of the battle wounds that you get through when you don't have any money and you don't have any, you don't have the access to the food that, so I don't know. I think it's incredibly important to get that trust. I think it's incredibly important to work together. And then then you can get to some things on the court, we need a better connection in the ball screen game. And the fact that they've been through some tough stuff together, the fact that the culture of hard work is in place, I think you can now get a better connection in the ball screen game. I think you can now have a better connection defensively. So I think it all just ties in together. And I think ultimately experience as a college basketball player because it all goes by pretty quickly and so as a coach I want to provide the best experience I can for our athletes.
Talk about experience. Looking back at last year and being able to host the NCAA tournament, right? And obviously, you're hoping to go a little bit further, but just to be able to host something like that, and you could see the girls, their reaction afterwards. Of course, obviously, visibly upset, and Gabby, I think, was the one that kind of touched a lot of people of how she really loved the university and how close her and Aoka were, during the last 2 years. And when you as a coach, you see how much, effort and just the energy and the passion that they have and going to a tournament like that and seeing how much it hurt to hopefully maybe drive them next year. When you look back at that whole experience, was just maybe the tournament itself, what did you maybe learn as a coach or what did you see out of the team where you're like, wow, like they really understood what it takes to get here?
Well, I think a couple things. One, it was great to see the community and K-Staters respond to this basketball team. You could tell by putting 20,000 in there on the weekend for the tournament that they really connected with this team and that we did do some good things. In a lot of ways, it was a special year. We climbed all the way to number 2 in the country. We beat Iowa with obviously the best known player in the country, maybe the world right now, in Caitlin Clark. And we had some special moments. and then the pain of the loss, I mean, that one still stings. I mean, I'm not over it yet, and I don't think I'm going to be over it yet. I don't think that, yeah, I'm going to, is it drive me? Well, it's certainly in leaving me in park right now. I can tell you that. And it certainly is something that, we want to be in that same position to have that opportunity again. But it doesn't take away from all the great things this team accomplished. And, Gabby was, I think, that was the raw emotion that people, they don't always get to see. They don't always get to see. And I think it's a great reminder of how much, when you're invested in something, how special it is to you, but also how much it hurts when things don't maybe go the way you want it to.
And coach, just for you to bring in some of the, portal additions that you had as well. I can't remember her name, but I know she went to Missouri State. I cannot remember her name right now,
Yep.
but
Taylor.
yes, yes. Just talk about her, and I know that's another big presence, right? To maybe alleviate some of the pressure off Aoka. Maybe you don't have to play her as much, or maybe you can play them together. Obviously, there's a lot of those intertwined. What is it like to have another big like that, where maybe you don't have to rely on Aoka as much, or again, you can play them together? How big was that to have another piece like that?
Yeah, I think it was really big because we had watched Kennedy develop and watched her do some really good things at Missouri State, and she has that physical body that can defend but bang on the offensive glass, and that was a weakness of ours. We did not rebound the basketball well when Aoka Lee went down for the 7 games. That was a real weakness of ours, and we also at the same time had Amani Lester out in a couple of those games, but we were just very thin there. And so it was a big addition, and we were able to get her early in the portal. So that, when you get them early in the portal, you start to plug maybe some things you need to plug. And that allowed us to have some flexibility in going to get Poindexter after that. And, Poindexter will hopefully plug that hole of losing a Gabby Gregory, who could really score the basketball. Poindexter shows a knack for doing that. So I think both are going to be big additions.
So I guess another thing, coach, when you add these players in the portal where you didn't have to do that earlier in your career, and when you mix and match all these different players every single year and try to see what works, is that fun for you as a coach? Is it difficult? What goes into that when you know you do have a lot of players back from last year, but you're going to have to plug in some new ones too, and hopefully see them gel. What are the challenges? What are the benefits of that?
Yeah, I think it's all fun in its own way. It's fun to watch the development of our players that we've retained. It's fun to see the players like a Serena Sundell, like a Jalen Glenn, where they were as a freshman and where they've gotten to. But I also think it's fun to add a piece and say, boy, this might be a fun one to, how can we play them together here? What action can we run? So, when you add new players, particularly out of the portal, you end up spending a lot of time on film of watching what they were really good at. And how does that fit with where we want to use them? And how does that fit where I want to use them? And then when you get them, I think what's kind of fun about that is just having those conversations with them. Where are you comfortable at? Where do you feel like you play your best? And so I think all of it's just part of coaching, and I enjoy that part.
And another thing, coach, when you look at this team specifically, right? You bring a lot back. Is there one player that you're really excited about for that senior year, or like you were mentioning Ziana and you were talking about Taryn? Is there one person on this team? I know you're excited for everybody, but is there one that you can maybe really see that they may have that big year this year?
Well, I was really excited when Yoki said she was coming back. I mean, that was exciting. I think Serena, comes to mind. I think Jay come to mind. Um, I think just because they've been through it, and I think that they have another level of where they can get to. And then I think I mentioned Taryn and Zai earlier, but because they were both new in the system last year, I think that jump for them at the guard spot can allow us to move players around. And we really didn't have maybe that advantage last year. We went in thinking maybe move some around, and then we were like, no, Zai's more comfortable here, Taryn's more comfortable here. It's only their first year in the system. But now I don't see that at all on the practice floor. When we get them together, I'm seeing, hey, I can move all these guards all over the floor. And so that part I'm really excited about. But you know, when you're in July, you can kind of play with some things and see what works and what doesn't. As we get to September and certainly late September, we've got to narrow into things that we can be really, really good at.
And I'll wrap it up with that, Coach. When you are in these summer months, when you're figuring out what pieces you have and seeing the growth of these players, what are you saying? Or as you said, you're not really doing much of the coaching. You're kind of having these, personal relationships with them, like saying, hey, this is what I see, this is what I envision, so many different things. What is it about these couple of months where you really try to focus in on with these players? What are these summer months and leading up to the season? What's so crucial about these couple months leading up to the season?
Well, the development piece, and I think that the strength and conditioning piece, the development piece of the skills, and then I think the thing that I as a head coach try to do is just make sure that we have the same message as a staff. Everybody's teaching the same thing. Everybody has the same message, because the trust factor is incredibly important every day. That so that when we go through the tough stuff, that I can push them harder. I have the trust of them. They know those things. They know what they're going to get. And so I spend a lot of my time coaching the coaches right now of hey, here's where we're going with this. Here's our terminology. And so that's a lot of the 2 months here. But the development piece here, Vince, has always been critical for us, because we've got great we have as good of development situation for players as I've ever coached at, the best I've ever coached at, because with the weight room right off the floor, with the training room right there, with where they live, 83 steps away from the front door, there is no excuse not to get better. And, we have to take advantage of those things.
All right, I'll ask you one more, I promise. Just the cliche, right? The cliche question. The expectation, right? That's the first. You gotta ask the coach. You gotta ask coach that. The expectation when you bring in again the people that you have, what are you expecting out of this year? And of course, you don't want to look back at last year, because obviously last year was last year. It's a new group this year. What are those expectations, and what are you hoping for out of this year's team?
Well, we're excited about the expectation that we're going to have an opportunity to compete for a Big 12 championship. And I think the league, and I think the one thing the transfer portal has done is that I think it's made the leagues harder. I think everybody, because if you were a team in the past that graduated 5, 6, 7 seniors, you would have to replace all of them with JUCO players or high school players, and you did not have the ability to have 1,000 players in the portal to choose from. You didn't have it. It wasn't there. So your roster management was different. But now teams can lose 6 and bring 6 really good players in. And how quickly they gel, you don't know. So I think the league is going to be really, really strong. I mean, we're already seeing it in the preseason, where you've got, I think we show up anywhere from 10 to 14 in the country, but 5 Big 12 teams show up in the top 20. And so I just think that we're going to have that opportunity. We've got a talented group. My focus right now is that if we can stack a bunch of days together and we can win July. June was not as good a month. I'll be honest. June was not as good a month as I wanted, because it was so inconsistent. We had some players that were doing some internship stuff, so they were not here. We had camps being ran. So players were kind of running everywhere. We had overnight camp, we had elite camp. But now we settle into a pretty good 4 or 5 weeks here where I think it's critical for us to take that step. But you know what? We're not going to shy away from the high expectations. I'm excited about starting somewhere in the top 15, probably. I think we deserve it. A year ago, we were, I think, the only team to go. I think Randy Peterson came with some stat that we were the only team to start outside the top 25 to climb all the way to number 2 in the country. But it's much better to start in the top 25, and so I'm excited about those expectations.
Okay, I promise. I know I said I promised 3 times ago, but does
Yeah,
that
man.
give you? Does that give you? I wouldn't say more motivation, but does that maybe give or add a little bit more pressure? Because like you said, you were out of the top 25, but now you're in the top. Does that have any more add more pressure, or does it really just show, hey, the hard work that we're doing, it's now being recognized?
I don't think so, because that's not our focus. The rankings are the rankings, and while I think it's always better to start in them as a starting point because that shows that people have high expectations for you, but I don't think so. That's not our focus, and that's not something that I even hear our players talk about. Quite honestly, Vince, our players talk. I don't have to spend a lot of time with them talking about what we believe culture wise. They know. I believe that it starts with the hard work we do, and you know, the cliche of win the day. It sounds simple, but it's not easy to do. But if you do it enough times, you're going to end up being pretty good. So I don't think it does. I think the reality of it is that that's where every team wants to be. They want to be in the top 20, and if you want to be there, then you got to handle whatever comes with it, right?
Well, coach, is there anything else? I know we went over a lot of different topics. I know that's it. Is there anything else that I'm missing that you could think of from the transfer portal players, from any players you have on the team, Aoka, anything that I'm missing that you like to add?
Well, I can't think of anything. You I think you covered it all, Vince.